The scent of 1,000 white roses choked her each petal, a thorn in her heart. From the shadows of a centuries-old cypress tree, 8 months pregnant and utterly alone, Isabella watched the man who was still her husband slip a diamond onto another woman's finger. He was a millionaire, a titan of industry, and he was publicly humiliating her in the most lavish way imaginable. But Julian didn't know the secrets she kept the silent vows made to her in rooms he could never enter. He thought she was a broken little bird. He was about to find out she was the storm. The wedding was a spectacle of obscene wealth, a carefully orchestrated performance set against the breathtaking backdrop of the Villa d'Este on the shores of Lake Como. Tourists on the ferryboats paused, their cameras flashing, trying to capture a glimpse of the fairy tale. But for Isabella Rossi, hidden away in a secluded grove, it was the final glittering nail in the coffin of her marriage. Her husband, Julian Vance, a man whose name was a synonym for power in the world of international finance, was marrying his mistress, Serafina Dubois. The irony was a bitter pill. It was here, in this very garden, under the same ancient wisteria, that Julian had proposed to her 3 years ago. He had called her his anchor, his quiet strength, the one pure thing in his gilded, chaotic world. Now she was just an inconvenient truth, a swelling belly that marred his perfect new picture. Isabella rested a hand on the curve of her stomach, where their son, their unborn child, kicked gently, as if sensing his mother's distress. She had begged him, pleaded with him when he'd first confessed his affair and his intention to marry Serafina. "Think of the baby, Julian," she had whispered, her voice raw, with a pain so deep it felt physical. "He deserves a family." Julian's response had been cold, clinical. "I will provide for him, Isabella. He will have the best of everything, but I will not be shackled to a loveless marriage." Loveless. The word had echoed in the cavernous, minimalist penthouse they once shared, a space now stripped of her presence, her books, her art. Had it always been loveless for him? Had the quiet evenings, the shared laughter, the nights she'd spent soothing his anxieties when a deal went sour, all been a figment of her imagination? From her vantage point, she could see him clearly. He was devastatingly handsome in his custom-tailored Tom Ford tuxedo. He leaned in to whisper something in Serafina's ear, a gesture so intimate, so familiar, that it stole the air from Isabella's lungs. Serafina, a willowy former model with eyes the color of ice, threw her head back and laughed, the sound carrying across the manicured lawns. She was everything Isabella wasn't. She was faux and flash, her public persona, as curated as her Instagram feed. Isabella was quiet, introspective, a woman who found solace in rare books and rainy afternoons. Julian had once claimed to love that about her. "You are my peace," he used to say. Now it seemed he craved chaos. The press was there in droves, a veritable army of photographers and reporters, held back by a velvet rope and a platoon of security guards. They called it the wedding of the year. The headlines were already written: "Billionaire Julian Vance weds socialite." Serafina Dubois in Italian paradise. Her own existence, her status as his legal wife, was a footnote he was ruthlessly trying to erase. His lawyers had sent her the divorce papers 2 weeks ago, offering a settlement that was generous by any normal standard, but insulting in its implication: take the money and disappear. Be a good, quiet girl. She hadn't signed them, not out of hope for reconciliation, but out of a stubborn refusal to make this easy for him. Her lawyer, a bulldog of a man named Marcus Thorne, had advised her to wait. "We have leverage, Isabella. The pregnancy is public adultery. Don't fold yet." But watching them now, seeing the triumphant smirk on Serafina's face as she flaunted the colossal diamond, a gaudy monstrosity that eclipsed the elegant sapphire Julian had given her, Isabella felt her resolve crumble. What was the point of fighting? He had already won. He had the world at his feet, the woman he wanted on his arm, and the power to silence any inconvenient truths. A gust of wind rustled the leaves of the cypress tree, a sudden chill in the warm Italian air. Dark clouds were beginning to gather over the mountains on the far side of the lake, a stark contrast to the brilliant sunshine bathing the wedding party. It felt like an omen. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a single discreet vibration. She pulled it out. It was a message from an unsaved number, but she recognized it instantly. "Patience, Principessa, the cavalry is coming." Isabella's breath hitched. A flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks, a spark of defiance ignited in her chest. She looked back at the wedding, at the man who was erasing her, and for the first time that day, a genuine, albeit faint, smile touched her lips. Julian thought he knew everything about her. He knew Isabella Rossi, the quiet art historian from a modest family. He had no idea who Isabella di Sforza really was. And he had no idea that the silent allies she had cultivated, the powerful figures from a life he never knew existed, were about to descend on his perfect curated world like a gathering storm. The first drops of rain began to fall fat and cold, spotting the dark silk of her maternity dress. The performance was about to begin. The ceremony reached its crescendo. The officiant, a man whose face was familiar from celebrity magazines, pronounced them husband and wife. A roar of applause erupted from the guests, a symphony of the rich and influential, celebrating the union of power and beauty. Julian dipped Serafina in a dramatic kiss, a move clearly designed for the cameras. It was a perfect shot, a moment of manufactured passion that would be on the cover of every tabloid by morning. For Isabella, watching from the shadows, the sight was a physical blow. The last vestiges of the woman who loved Julian Vance died in that moment. The pain that had been a constant dull ache for months sharpened into something cold and hard and clear. It was no longer just grief. It was resolve. She had to leave. To stay any longer would be to let the humiliation consume her whole. Holding on to the rough bark of the cypress for support, she turned to make her way back to the small, inconspicuous car she had parked on a side street. But as she turned, she saw them. Julian and Serafina walking hand in hand, not towards their reception, but directly towards her grove. A small entourage, including Julian's best man and Serafina's maid of honor, trailed behind them, champagne flutes in hand. Panic flared in Isabella's chest. He couldn't see her like this, swollen heart broken a ghost at his feast. She tried to shrink back further into the shadows, but it was too late. Julian's eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto hers. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second before it was replaced by a mask of cold fury. "Isabella." His voice was low, menacing. "What in God's name are you doing here?" Serafina clung to his arm, her expression a perfect blend of feigned concern and malicious triumph. "Oh, Julian, darling, look. It's your ex." She let the word hang in the air, a deliberate sting. "I didn't realize you'd been invited." The small entourage behind them fell silent, their eyes flicking between the regal new bride, the furious groom, and the heavily pregnant woman in the shadows. The air crackled with a tension that was more dramatic than any staged ceremony. "I wasn't Isabella," said her voice surprisingly steady. She met Julian's gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm still your wife, Julian, in the eyes of the law, if not in your heart. I thought I should witness the moment you committed bigamy." A gasp rippled through the small group. Julian's face darkened. "Don't be ridiculous. The papers have been filed. You were sent a generous offer." "It's your own fault for not signing." "Generous?" Isabella laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You call that generous a pittance to erase 3 years of my life, to buy my silence while you parade your infidelity for the world to see." My darling Serafina interjected, her voice dripping with saccharine pity. She stepped forward, her white gown pristine against the darkening grass. "You're making a scene. You're clearly overwrought. It's the hormones, I imagine." She glanced pointedly at Isabella's stomach. "Julian has offered to take care of you. Of it. You should be grateful." The dismissive wave of Serafina's hand towards her unborn child was the final cut. The carefully constructed dam of Isabella's composure broke. Grateful Isabella stepped out of the shadows, her presence suddenly commanding. The rain was falling more steadily now, clinging to her dark hair, but she didn't seem to notice. "Grateful that my husband is attempting to discard me and his own son like a corporate asset that's underperforming. Grateful that he's replacing me with you. A woman whose only notable achievement is climbing her way out of obscurity by sleeping with other women's husbands." Serafina's face flushed an ugly red beneath her perfect makeup. "How dare you, I dare, Isabella," said her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying more weight than all their shouts. "You have no idea what I dare." She looked at Julian, her eyes boring into his. The love was gone, replaced by a chilling disappointment. "I came here today to see for myself what I was losing. And I have. I see a weak man, so terrified of his own heart that he surrounds himself with shiny, empty things to feel powerful. And I see a woman so desperate for validation, she'd build her happiness on the ruins of another's." Julian took a step forward, his hand raised as if to silence her. "That's enough, Isabella." "It is," she agreed, pulling her gaze away from him as if he were no longer worth her attention. "It is more than enough." She turned her back on them, on the gasping guests, on the man who was the father of her child. As she began to walk away, her steps slow and deliberate, the heavens seemed to open. The gentle rain transformed into a torrential downpour. Thunder cracked overhead, a sudden violent sound that made Serafina shriek and cower against Julian. But Isabella didn't flinch. She kept walking, her head held high, the rain plastering her dress to her body, outlining the defiant swell of her belly. She was walking away from her old life, a sodden, solitary figure against the backdrop of a ruined society wedding. Julian watched her go, a strange, unreadable expression on his face, a flicker of doubt or just annoyance that his perfect day was being upstaged by a pregnant woman and a thunderstorm. As Isabella reached the edge of the villa's grand iron gates, the distant purr of an engine grew louder. It was a low, powerful sound, the kind of sound that announced the arrival of not just wealth, but of consequence. A pair of headlights cut through the deluge. A car, long, black, and impossibly sleek, pulled to a silent stop directly in front of her. It wasn't a taxi. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a vehicle that cost more than the average person's house, its black paint gleaming like wet obsidian in the stormy afternoon. The rear door opened with a quiet, expensive click. An umbrella, also black, unfurled, held by a chauffeur in a flawless uniform. He held it over Isabella, shielding her from the downpour as if she were a queen. From inside the car, a figure leaned forward. Isabella paused, her hand on the open door, and glanced back. Through the sheets of rain, she could just make out Julian and Serafina, standing frozen on the lawn, their perfect wedding dissolving into a chaotic, muddy mess. They were staring, confused and wary, at the impossible sight. Who was Isabella Rossi? The quiet, discarded wife. The penniless art historian. As the first black car waited its engine, a low, patient thrum. The answer began to announce itself. Julian Vance was about to learn that the woman he had tried to erase was more powerful than he could ever have imagined, and her allies, the ones who had just arrived, did not play by his rules. The interior of the Rolls-Royce was a cocoon of silence and luxury. The chaos of the storm instantly muted by layers of soundproofed glass and supple black leather. The air smelled of old money and authority. Seated opposite her was a man Isabella had not seen in person for 5 years, though his influence had been a quiet, constant presence in her life. He was Alessandro Vincenzo, her godfather. To the world he was a recluse, a legendary figure in European finance, the so-called kingmaker, who operated from the shadows, his wealth so vast and old, it made Julian Vance's fortune look like a rounding error. He was in his late 60s, with a mane of silver hair, piercing grey eyes that missed nothing, and a face that looked like it had been carved from Tuscan marble. He was family, not by blood, but by a bond forged in loyalty and secrets long before she had ever met Julian. Alessandro. Isabella breathed a wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled her. He reached across the space between them and took her cold hand in his warm, dry one. His touch was firm, paternal. Mia cara Isabella. My little principessa, did you think we would abandon you? Tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed in front of Julian now welled in her eyes. I didn't know who else to call. You did not need to call. We have been watching, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. We gave Mr. Vance enough rope to hang himself. It seems he has fashioned a rather elaborate noose. His gaze flickered past her out the rain-streaked window, towards the villa where Julian and his bride were now being ushered inside by frantic staff. He is about to learn a very old, very important lesson. The Sforza name is not to be dishonored. Isabella flinched at the mention of her family name, the name she had shed when she married Julian, hoping for a simpler, anonymous life. Sforza. A name that carried the weight of centuries of Italian nobility, of power brokers, patrons of the arts and figures who had shaped the destiny of nations from behind the scenes. She was descended not from modest art historians, but from one of the most powerful and discreet dynasties in Europe. A fact she had deliberately hidden from Julian, wanting to be loved for herself, not for her connections. It had been a naive, romantic dream. He never knew, Isabella said quietly, wiping a tear from her cheek. I wanted a life away from all that. A life that was just mine. And you deserved that, Alessandro said, his expression softening. But you chose a man who understands only one thing, power. He mistook your humility for weakness. He mistook your independence for isolation, a fatal miscalculation. The chauffeur closed the door, and the car began to move, gliding away from the villa, with a silent, imposing grace. As they passed the main gate, another car, a black Mercedes Maybach, pulled in behind them, and behind that, a black Bentley flying. A formidable procession was forming a funereal parade for Julian Vance's life as he knew it. "Who is in the other cars?" Isabella asked, her curiosity piqued through her exhaustion. "Allies," Alessandro said simply. "Family. People who owe your father a debt of honor. People who understand that when one of us is threatened, all of us respond." He gestured to a small, built-in refrigerator. "Some water." He poured her a glass of San Pellegrino, the iconic green bottle, a small, familiar comfort. He then poured himself a small glass of something amber. "Now," he said, taking a sip, "tell me everything, and do not spare a single ugly detail. Marcus Thorne has handled the legal preliminaries, but the real response begins now. We will be surgical, we will be swift, and we will be merciless." Isabella took a deep breath. For months, she had been drowning her story, unheard, her pain dismissed. Now she had the ear of one of the most powerful men in the world. She began to speak, her voice gaining strength with every word. She told him about the subtle dismissals, the gaslighting, the way Julian had slowly isolated her from the few friends she had made in his world. She told him about the discovery of the affair, the brutal confrontation, his cold-blooded proposal to Serafina while she was still living in their home, pregnant with his child. Alessandro listened without interruption, his grey eyes turning to flint. He was a man of few words, but his stillness was more intimidating than any outburst. When she finished, the silence in the car was heavy, profound. "He took your shares in Vance Industries as part of the prenuptial agreement." "Correct," Alessandro asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Yes," Isabella confirmed. "He said it was a formality. He put them in a blind trust managed by his board." Alessandro smiled, a chilling, humorless expression. "His board," he mused. "Let's talk about his board. Robert Chen, head of Asian markets. His company was on the brink of collapse in 2008. Your father personally guaranteed a loan that saved him, a loan he never called in." He ticked off a finger. "Lady Annalise Beaumont, British aristocrat with impeccable connections. Her family's estate was about to be seized for back taxes. A word from your uncle to the right people in Parliament made that problem disappear." He ticked off another finger. "And my personal favorite, Javier Morales, the tech guru from Spain. A brilliant mind, but he had a youthful indiscretion involving some rather sensitive government data. Your cousin, the one who works in intelligence in Rome, made sure the file was permanently buried." Isabella stared at him, stunned. She knew her family was influential, but the scale of their reach, the intricate web of favors and debts, was something she had never truly comprehended. 3 of the 7 board members of Vance Industries, Alessandro continued, his smile widening, owe their entire careers, their very freedom to the Sforza family. They have been waiting for a call, for a chance to repay that debt. I believe that call will be made tonight, before Mr. Vance and his new bride have even finished their wedding cake." He leaned back against the leather. "He wanted to erase you, Isabella. Instead, he has made you visible to us again. He has reminded us of our obligation to you. By the time the sun rises over Lake Como tomorrow, Julian Vance will find that the empire he built is a house of cards. And we," he said with a final chilling finality, "are the wind." The convoy of black cars did not head for an airport or a hotel. Instead, it wound its way up a steep private road, deep into the hills overlooking the lake, a region tourists never saw. They passed through an ancient stone archway, unmarked and unadorned, and arrived at a sprawling, secluded estate that had been in the Sforza family for over 400 years, the Villa Falcone. The Falcon Villa. It was not a place of opulent display like the Villa d'Este, but one of quiet, unassailable power. It was Isabella's childhood home, a place she hadn't returned to since her mother's funeral. As the Rolls-Royce crunched to a halt on the gravel driveway, the doors to the villa swung open. A staff of familiar, loyal faces greeted her, not with pity, but with a quiet, fierce respect. Benvenuta. A casa principessa, the elderly butler, Massimo, said, his voice thick with emotion. Welcome home. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of beeswax and old stone. The men from the other cars were already there, gathered in the grand library, a 2-story room lined with priceless books and dominated by a massive, centuries-old fireplace. They were the allies Alessandro had spoken of, a formidable assembly of power. There was Kenji Tanaka, a Japanese industrialist whose quiet demeanor belied a ruthless business acumen. His father had been saved from a hostile takeover by Isabella's grandfather. He bowed deeply to her. Isabella-san, it is an honor to stand with you. Next to him stood Sheikh Rashid Al-Jamil, a member of a powerful Emirati royal family whose investments controlled significant portions of the global energy market. He had attended Oxford with Isabella's older brother, and they were bound by a friendship that transcended business. Isabella, he said, his voice warm, but his eyes hard. Tell me what you need. It is yours. And then there was Elena Petrova, a woman who looked more like a Bond villain than a businesswoman. Sharp, elegant, and notoriously brilliant, she was the CEO of a global private security and intelligence firm. Her connection was the most personal. Isabella's mother, a renowned philanthropist in her own right, had rescued Elena from a trafficking ring in Eastern Europe when she was just a teenager and funded her education. Elena owed her entire life to the Sforza matriarch. He will not know what hit him, Elena said, her Russian accent clipping her words with precision. My teams are already in place. We have been running passive surveillance on Vance Industries for the past 48 hours. We have found irregularities. Many irregularities. This was the true nature of her family's power. It wasn't just wealth. It was a global network of loyalty, a tapestry of debts of honor that could be called upon at a moment's notice. Julian had tried to humiliate a woman he thought was alone. He had, in fact, declared war on a dynasty. Alessandro took his place at the head of the massive oak table. Friends, he began. Thank you for coming. Our purpose is simple. We are here to rebalance the scales. Julian Vance has committed an offense not just against Isabella, but against the honor of our collective houses. He turned to a large screen that descended silently from the ceiling. Elena, if you would. Elena Petrova stepped forward, a tablet in her hand. With pleasure. An organizational chart of Vance Industries appeared on the screen. As we know, Vance's empire is built on 3 pillars: finance technology and luxury real estate. It appears strong, but it is over-leveraged. He has been using creatively, and I use that word generously structured debt to finance his acquisitions. He's been shuffling assets between shell corporations to hide losses and inflate his company's valuation. She swiped the tablet, and a complex web of transactions appeared on the screen, flowing between entities in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Liechtenstein. My forensic accountants have found the pattern. It's a classic Ponzi scheme, albeit a very sophisticated one. He uses the influx of capital from new investors to pay off the old ones, all while siphoning millions into his personal accounts, like the one used to pay for today's theatrical production. Isabella felt a chill. She had always known Julian was ambitious, even ruthless, but she had never imagined he was a common criminal dressed in a bespoke suit. The key, Elena continued, is investor confidence. His entire empire is built on his reputation as an infallible financial genius. If that reputation were to crumble, if his key investors were to pull out simultaneously, the entire structure would collapse within hours. Sheikh Rashid leaned forward. My sovereign wealth fund has a significant position in his latest tech venture. We were planning on doubling our investment next quarter. He smiled thinly. I believe I will be instructing my fund managers to divest. Immediately, citing a loss of confidence in senior management. Kenji Tanaka nodded. My corporations supply the rare earth minerals for his tech division. I foresee significant, unavoidable supply chain disruptions starting at midnight Tokyo time. It would be a tragedy. Alessandro turned his gaze to Isabella. And the board members I mentioned earlier, Robert Chen, Lady Annalise Beaumont, Javier Morales, they are waiting for one call. They control 40% of the voting shares, enough to call an emergency meeting and force a vote of no confidence, enough to authorize an independent audit, which, thanks to Elena's work, we know will be devastating. He slid a satellite phone across the table to Isabella. The call should come from you, Principessa. Isabella looked at the phone, then at the faces around the table. They were not acting out of pity. They were acting out of a shared code of honor that Julian, in his arrogance, could never comprehend. He had broken the rules of their world, and this was the consequence. She picked up the phone, her hand steady. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about protecting her son's future from the toxic legacy of his father. It was about reclaiming her own name. Put Robert Chen on, she said, her voice clear and strong. While she made the calls one by one, methodically dismantling the board that supported her husband, Eleanor projected another image onto the screen. It was a live feed from a high-powered surveillance camera aimed at the grand ballroom of the Villa d'Este. The party was in full swing. Julian and Serafina were dancing, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, oblivious to the storm that was about to break over their heads. They looked happy, triumphant. Julian raised a glass of champagne, no doubt toasting to his new life, his new wife, his perfect future. In the quiet library of the Villa Falcone, surrounded by her hidden allies, Isabella watched him on the screen. She felt a strange sense of detachment, as if she were watching a character in a movie, a man she used to know. The man on the screen was a fraud, and his world was a fiction. The first alert came to Sheikh Rashid's phone. A single discreet buzz. He glanced at it. The markets in Asia will open in 1 hour, he announced to the room. My sell order has been placed. It will be the first trade of the day, a multi-billion-dollar divestment. It will trigger every automated alert system in the financial world. Elena smiled. And my anonymous tip, complete with a starter package of incriminating documents, has just been delivered to the desk of the top financial investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal. Her name is Catherine Miles. She is famously tenacious. Alessandro Vincenzo raised his glass of amber liquid. To new beginnings, he said, looking not at the screen, but at Isabella. Isabella nodded, a feeling of grim, resolute power settling over her. The trap was set. All the pieces were in place. Outside the storm over Lake Como had passed, leaving behind a sky of impossible clarity filled with stars. But for Julian Vance, The real storm was just about to hit. The first sign of trouble at the wedding reception was subtle. A senior aide approached Julian, whispering urgently in his ear, while he was in the middle of a self-congratulatory speech. Julian's smile tightened, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. He waved the aide away, determined not to let anything spoil his moment. But a few minutes later, another aide appeared, this one looking pale and frantic. He thrust a tablet into Julian's hands. On the screen was the pre-market data from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Vance Industries, VNC, was in free fall, a catastrophic vertical drop of 60%. The cause was listed as a massive, unexpected sell-off from a major institutional investor, the Al Jamil Sovereign Wealth Fund. Julian's blood ran cold. He excused himself abruptly, leaving a bewildered Serafina on the dance floor. He rushed to a private study, his top financial advisors already patched in on a frantic conference call. Panic laced their voices. "What the hell is going on? Why would Rashid pull out?" "I just spoke to his people last week," Julian roared into the phone. "We don't know," his CFO stammered. Their official statement just hit the wires. A sudden and total loss of confidence in VNC's executive leadership and financial transparency. "Julian, this is a disaster. It's triggering a cascade. Every hedge fund is trying to short us." Before he could process the first blow, his phone buzzed with a news alert. It was from the Wall Street Journal. The headline was a dagger to the heart. Vance Industries' House of Cards leaked documents suggest massive fraud, SEC investigation likely. The article was brutal, meticulous. It detailed the shell corporations, the inflated assets, the very creative accounting methods Elena's team had uncovered. It didn't make outright accusations, but it asked pointed, devastating questions, quoting anonymous sources deep within the European financial sector and close to the Vance Industries board. It was signed by Catherine Miles. "Get our PR team on this. Kill the story, sue them." Julian yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. "We can't," his head of communications squeaked. "They're not alleging, they're just reporting on leaked documents. It's airtight journalism. And, Julian, it's already been picked up by Reuters, Bloomberg, and the AP. It's everywhere." Then came the final fatal blow. An email landed in his inbox with the subject line, "Emergency Board Meeting Notification." It was from the office of Lady Annalise Beaumont. The meeting was scheduled for 1 hour from now. The agenda, a vote of no confidence in the CEO, and a motion to launch a full independent forensic audit of the company's finances. The motion was co-sponsored by Robert Chen and Javier Morales. Julian stared at the names. Chen, Beaumont, Morales. It was impossible. They were his staunchest allies, men and women whose loyalty he had taken for granted. He had built his board to be a rubber stamp, a collection of powerful people who owed him. Or so he thought. He felt the floor drop out from beneath him. This wasn't a random market fluctuation or a negative press story. This was a coordinated attack. It was an execution. His mind raced, searching for the source, the architect of this symphony of destruction. And then, like a ghost rising from a grave, the image of Isabella walking away in the rain, her head held high, flashed in his mind. He remembered the impossible arrival of the black Rolls-Royce, the quiet dignity that had replaced her grief. Her final words, "You have no idea what I dare." It couldn't be. Isabella, the quiet, unassuming art historian, the woman he had plucked from obscurity. How his office door burst open. It was Serafina, her face a mask of rage and confusion. "Julian, What is happening? My father just called me. He said, "Your stock is worthless." People are leaving the party. Everyone is on their phones. They're looking at us like we're criminals. Get out. Serafina. Julian said, his voice dangerously quiet. What? Don't you talk to me like that. I am your wife. A title that will be worth precisely nothing by morning. He snarled, the full weight of his ruin crashing down on him. This is all her fault. Isabella. Serafina stared at him bewildered. Isabella. What could she possibly have to do with this? She's a nobody. A nobody. Julian laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. We are fools, Serafina. We are absolute, complete fools. He had been so blinded by his own perceived brilliance, so dismissive of the woman he had married, that he had never once thought to look into her past beyond the superficial story she had presented. Who was she? Who were her people, who arrived in black cars to spirit away a discarded wife? The world he had built, the empire of glass and steel and digital code, was shattering around him. The calls were coming in a relentless flood. Lenders were pulling his lines of credit. Business partners were invoking termination clauses. The SEC had already announced a formal investigation. It was over. In the space of a single wedding dance, he had gone from a titan of industry to a pariah. Back at the Villa Falcone, Isabella and her allies watched the fallout on the screen in quiet satisfaction. They saw the news reports, the plunging stock tickers, the photos of panicked guests fleeing the lavish wedding reception. They saw Serafina arguing with her father on the phone, her fairy tale wedding dress now looking like a foolish costume in the face of utter financial ruin. Then Elena put a new image on the screen. It was a live feed from the security cameras outside the private study at the Villa d'Este. They watched as Julian, looking like a cornered animal, made a call. "We have audio," Elena said. Julian's voice, strained and desperate, filled the library. "Marcus. Get me Marcus Thorne." There was a pause. "What do you mean he's no longer representing me?" "He can't just quit. On whose authority?" "Isabella's." The phone clattered as Julian dropped it. He slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. He was utterly, completely alone. His own lawyer had defected. Alessandro Vincenzo turned to Isabella. Her face was calm, resolute. There was no glee, no triumphant celebration, just a profound, quiet sense of justice being served. "He will try to contact you," Alessandro said. "He will beg. He will threaten. He will promise you anything." "It won't matter," Isabella replied, placing a hand on her belly. "This was never about money. It was about respect. The respect he refused to give me or our son." She looked at the powerful figures assembled around her, and the respect he showed to no one. The final piece of their plan was yet to come. It was the most personal, the most cutting. Elena brought up another file on the screen. It was a dossier, complete with photographs and financial records. Serafina Dubois. Elena announced. While she was seeing Julian, she was also continuing a long-term affair with a certain aging Swiss banking tycoon, a man who happens to be one of Julian's primary business rivals. More interestingly, she has been feeding this rival information about Julian's business dealings for the past 18 months, for a very handsome fee. Sheikh Rashid let out a low whistle. So the viper in his bed was also a spy. "We will leak this tomorrow," Alessandro said. after his financial ruin is complete. It is important that he understands the full scope of his failure, that the woman for whom he destroyed his family was in fact an architect of his downfall as well. He looked at Isabella. A final poetic justice. Isabella gave a single slow nod. The humiliation would be absolute. He had traded a diamond for a shard of glass, and now he would be forced to see it. He hadn't just been outplayed. He had been a fool, and in his world there was no greater sin. Dawn broke over Lake Como with a cruel, painterly beauty. Ribbons of rose and gold bled across the sky, reflecting on the placid water, mocking the utter chaos of Julian Vance's inner world. He stood on the grand terrace of the Villa d'Este, not as a triumphant groom, but as a king surveying the ashes of his kingdom. The air, which 24 hours ago had been electric with applause and champagne-fueled laughter, was now heavy and still thick with the funereal scent of thousands of wilting white roses and stale, spilled alcohol. The silence was the most damning indictment of all, a profound cavernous emptiness where adoration used to be. His world had not just collapsed. It had been systematically, brilliantly, and silently dismantled in less than 12 hours. He had spent the night in a state of escalating panic, a caged animal rattling the bars of a prison he hadn't known existed. His frantic calls to bankers, to board members, to politicians had been met with a chilling uniform wall of silence. Voicemails went unreturned. Aides who once jumped at his shadow now sent terse, formal emails of resignation. He turned on a television in one of the suites only to see his own face staring back from a financial news program. A panel of sharp-tongued analysts were picking apart the bones of his empire with a kind of gleeful, clinical precision. They used words like hubris, house of cards, and a textbook case of narcissistic overreach. They showed a picture of him and Serafina from the wedding, their triumphant kiss now looking like a grotesque prelude to a tragedy. Then they flashed a picture of Isabella, a candid shot from years ago looking thoughtful and serene. The question everyone is asking, the anchor said, is who is the woman at the center of this storm, the quiet wife who it seems held all the cards? The story of Serafina's betrayal was the salt in the wound. It had broken online in the early hours of the morning, a sordid little tale of corporate espionage packaged for maximum humiliation. He could picture it perfectly, her whispered secrets to his rival over candle-lit dinners, her dismissive laughter about his ambitions behind his back. The woman for whom he had torched his life hadn't just been unfaithful. She had been a willing saboteur, another architect of his ruin. She had vanished before midnight, after a venomous argument in which she had accused him of deceiving her about the stability of his wealth. The irony was so bitter it tasted like poison. He was truly, utterly alone. A pariah, adrift in the wreckage of a life he had designed. It was in this state of absolute desolation that he saw it a single, unremarkable black sedan purring up the long driveway. It was not a car of a friend or an associate. It lacked the ostentation of his world. It was a vehicle of purpose, of grim function. A man in a simple, well-tailored suit emerged, his face impassive. He wasn't a chauffeur or a bodyguard. He was a messenger. He walked directly up to Julian, handed him a thick, cream-colored envelope and said, "From the office of Marcus Thorne." Then he turned and left his job complete. Marcus Thorne, his own lawyer. The bulldog he had paid a fortune to be his shield was now apparently a sword aimed at his throat. His hands trembled as he broke the wax seal which was stamped not with a law firm's logo, but with the intricate crest of a falcon. Inside were the divorce papers. They were not the papers he had sent Isabella. These were a different beast entirely. The language was cold, precise, and absolute. It was not a negotiation. It was a decree. He scanned the first few clauses, a flicker of incredulous hope sparking within him. She wasn't contesting the prenup. She was claiming no portion of his fortune, no alimony, no settlement from his now worthless stocks or frozen accounts. For a delirious second, he thought it was a mistake, an act of foolish, wounded pride. Then he turned the page to the addendum titled Reclamation of Premarital Assets of Isabella di Sforza Vance. Sforza. The name he had heard Alessandro Vincenzo speak in the library at Villa Falcone. The name that now seemed to seethe on the page. He began to read, his blood turning to ice. The list wasn't the modest collection of art, and the small inheritance he had condescendingly logged when their prenuptial agreement was drafted. It was a portfolio of such staggering scale and strategic importance that the air left his lungs. He saw a controlling interest in a Congolese mining conglomerate that held the exclusive rights to the cobalt that was essential to Vance Industries' tech division. He had spent 2 years aggressively negotiating that supply chain, never knowing he was negotiating with his own wife's ancestral holdings. He saw the deed to a vast tract of land in the UAE, the very land upon which Sheikh Rashid Al Jamil was building a multi-billion-dollar refinery, a project partially funded by a loan guaranteed by Vance Industries. The loan was now collateral against her land. The list went on and on. There were seed capital funds that had financed the very tech startups he had later acquired for a premium. There were trusts that owned the patents for key logistical software his empire relied upon. It was a web of power, silent and invisible, that had underpinned his entire ascent. He hadn't been a king. He had been a glorified manager, a court jester playing with the Queen's gold and thinking it was his own. His genius had been in leveraging assets she had quietly placed in his path, and he had been too arrogant, too blinded by his own reflection, to ever ask the source of his good fortune. The final pages were the most devastating. It was the custody agreement for their son. The language was surgical. It stripped him of all legal claims. No parental rights shall be granted. No contact shall be permitted. The child's surname will be Sforza. A trust funded exclusively by the assets of the mother will provide for the child's welfare and education in perpetuity. Julian Vance will be treated in the eyes of the law as a sperm donor with no further role. He was erased. The very act of annihilation he had intended for her had been turned back on him with a finality that was absolute. He had tried to discard her and his son, and in return her ancient, powerful family had stripped him of his company, his reputation, his legacy, and even his fatherhood. Miles away, bathed in the gentle morning light, Isabella stood on a sun-drenched balcony at the Villa Falcone. She wore a simple white linen dress, her hair unbound, her face serene. She was a world away from the weeping, broken woman who had hidden in the cypress grove. Alessandro Vincenzo joined her, handing her a cup of steaming herbal tea. "It is done," he said, his voice a quiet rumble. "He has received the papers." "And the company?" She asked, her gaze fixed on the tranquil horizon. "The board has accepted our offer. Marcus Thorne proved very persuasive," Alessandro said with a thin smile. "Through a series of proxies, the Sforza Consortium will acquire the salvageable assets, the tech patents, the infrastructure for a fraction of their worth. We will absorb them, cleanse them of his corrupt practices, and fold them into our own enterprises. We will build something stable, something honorable." He paused, looking at her with paternal pride. It will form the basis of a new legacy, a birthright for your son, a testament to his mother's strength. Isabella placed a hand over her swelling belly, where a gentle flutter reminded her of the future she now commanded. This had ceased to be about Julian long ago. It was about this life, this innocent child, who deserved to be born into a world of honor, not into the shadow of a disgraced man. Her phone buzzed softly on the stone balustrade. A message from Elena Petrova. It contained a single high-resolution photograph taken from a distance. It was Julian crumpled on the steps of the Villa d'Este, the cream-colored envelope in his hand. He looked hollowed out, a ghost haunting the ruins of his own party, small and utterly defeated against the grandeur of the setting. For a moment she looked at the image of the man she had once loved, the man who had caused her such profound pain. She felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no triumph. Only a vast, quiet distance. He was a chapter from a book she had already finished reading. With a simple, deliberate motion of her thumb, she deleted the image forever. He no longer warranted even a flicker of her attention. Below in the gravel driveway, the black Rolls-Royce Phantom waited its engine, a low, patient hum. Massimo, the butler, stood by the open door. It was time to leave. This was not an escape but a progression. She was not returning to a life of hiding, but stepping into her role as the head of her own house, the guardian of a dynasty. As she walked towards the car, her steps were not those of a victim. They were the measured, confident strides of a queen, leaving the chaos of a foolish man's war behind her, turning her face towards the calm, clear horizon of her own making. The past was settled. The future was hers to command. That's the story of how a single act of betrayal awakened a sleeping giant. Isabella's journey wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her power, her name, and her destiny from a man who saw her as nothing more than an accessory. It's a powerful reminder that the quietest people often have the deepest roots and the strongest allies. Julian Vance thought he was the king of his world, but he was merely a pawn in a much older, much grander game. Isabella didn't just win. She rewrote the rules and took the entire board. If you were captivated by Isabella's story of epic justice and hidden power, don't forget to hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves a story of ultimate triumph. What was your favorite twist? Let us know in the comments below. And for more gripping tales of drama and empowerment, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Imagine walking into the most lavish baby shower you've ever seen. Crystal chandeliers twinkling above towers of pastel macarons, designer goodie bags lining each seat, and a guest list that reads like a who's who of society's elite. But there's a dark secret beneath all that sparkle. The woman throwing this extravaganza is not the mother-to-be's best friend. She's the millionaire's mistress, and the mother-to-be. She's out of the picture, or so everyone thinks, until suddenly the doors swing open. In strides the real pregnant wife, clutching a marriage license that's about to unravel every lie in this glitzy room. Welcome to the scandal. Damien Blackwell wasn't born into wealth. He fought for it, with the kind of ruthless ambition that made him as feared as he was admired. Standing at 6'2", with carefully styled jet black hair, Damien possessed an intensity that could either captivate or intimidate, depending on which side of his generosity you landed on. By age 35, he had turned a small real estate venture into a sprawling empire. His name was whispered at exclusive charity balls, and he was recognized by moguls in the business world. Tabloid columns loved to label him a self-made millionaire with a heart of stone, yet society columns fawned over him as the unstoppable visionary on the rise. Despite the rumors swirling around him, people craved his presence. They invited him to their galas and philanthropic events, hoping a portion of his Midas touch might rub off. He'd appear in the company of A-list celebrities. Oprah Winfrey once interviewed him on a short segment, calling him the real deal, and he'd been spotted at a fundraiser sitting next to Bill Gates discussing global real estate strategies. His was a name that opened doors, sealed deals, and turned heads. But behind the veneer of polished success lay a tangled personal life. Damien was married, though not everyone in his social circle knew it. And he also had a mistress, a younger woman named Charmaine Delgado, who was cunning enough to stand by his side when it mattered, and discreet enough to remain in the shadows until she chose not to. It all began one deceptively quiet morning in their New York penthouse. Damien sipping his black coffee, looking over spreadsheets of property acquisitions. Charmaine flipping through a luxury magazine, her eyes lingering on an article about extravagant parties. A dazzling idea began to form in her mind that would soon lead to chaos. The quiet secret of Damien's life was his marriage to Elizabeth Redwood. At 28, Elizabeth exuded a calm, regal grace. She had grown up in a well-respected family in Boston. Her father, Jonathan Redwood, was a high-powered attorney, and her mother, Catherine Redwood, was a socialite renowned for her philanthropic work. Unlike Damien, Elizabeth had come from money, but she carried her privilege with humility. She taught underprivileged children art in a non-profit school. The marriage was low-key. Elizabeth had never been much for public fanfare, and Damien was all too willing to keep his personal life private to protect his empire from scrutiny. Over the years, they had cultivated an image of a silent, behind-the-scenes couple, rarely photographed together, rarely attending events hand in hand. Some thought they were just close business partners. Others assumed they had parted ways. Only a few intimates knew the truth. But Elizabeth was pregnant, something she had confided only in her close friend, Bella Thompson. They were planning to tell the world in their own time, but the pregnancy was a delicate matter. She had suffered 2 miscarriages in the past, and the heartbreak made her cautious. So Elizabeth kept a low profile, preferring to rest in the couple's Connecticut estate, rather than remain in the hustle and bustle of the city. Damien's visits to Connecticut had grown infrequent. The demands of his business took him overseas, so he said. Elizabeth trusted him mostly. She had chosen to focus on her health, certain that once the baby arrived, their marriage would find renewed purpose. What she didn't know was that Damien wasn't merely away on business. He was in Manhattan often with Charmaine Delgado on his arm. And Charmaine was hatching a plan that would rattle the foundations of everything Elizabeth believed about her marriage. Charmaine Delgado was a woman who knew how to make an entrance. With chestnut brown hair styled in sleek waves, impeccable designer outfits, and a fierce determination in her hazel eyes, she had carved out a place for herself in high society, albeit on the margins of respectability. People whispered that she was Damien's mistress, but they also noticed that her circle included the wives of major hedge fund managers, fashion influencers, and even small-time celebrities who adored her lavish dinner parties. She wasn't satisfied with being a well-kept secret. Her ultimate goal was to become the next Mrs. Blackwell. She loved the taste of power she enjoyed at Damien's side. The hush money, the compliments, the exclusive events he brought her to, under the pretense of a business associate. She wanted more than stolen weekends in a Paris penthouse or summers at a Tuscan villa. She longed to replace Elizabeth Redwood, whom she considered dull and undeserving of the empire Damien was building. "Have you thought about throwing a party?" Charmaine cooed one morning as she lounged in Damien's penthouse, the city skyline glittering behind her. A big one with all the right people. It could be a statement event. Maybe a fundraiser for your new philanthropic arm. Damien, engrossed in reading a financial report, merely raised an eyebrow. "You know those events are important, but we have an entire pep team that organizes them. I don't need more noise around me," she persisted. "We need to show the world you're a man of the people, not just a cutthroat deal-maker. And you know I can handle logistics. Our friend Ariana Roswell from the Van Cleef & Arpels brand could sponsor part of it. It'll be huge, darling." He shrugged. "I'll consider it. Right now, I'm more focused on finalizing a land acquisition in Dubai." But that was just the first step of Charmaine's plan. She knew a single social event wouldn't be enough to stir up the scandal that might eventually push Elizabeth aside. She needed something bigger, something personal. And an opportunity was about to present itself in the most unexpected way. Miles away, Elizabeth Redwood was experiencing a new wave of morning sickness in the Connecticut estate. Damien's presence had dwindled to phone calls, text messages. They were cordial, affectionate, even, but detached. He assured her he was overworked and traveling internationally, promising that once deals were settled, he'd be back for a calm, quiet life together, especially when the baby arrived. Late one night, Elizabeth felt an unsettling pang in her chest that had nothing to do with pregnancy. It was a sense that something was off. Her friend Bella had dropped by earlier in the day, showing her social media photos from a party Charmaine Delgado had thrown. Charmaine's Instagram stories were suspiciously replete with hints of a wealthy backer. The location was suspiciously similar to a penthouse Elizabeth recognized as one of Damien's properties in Manhattan. Elizabeth tried to stifle the jealousy, telling herself that this was just a business associate hosting a private function. But the uneasy feeling refused to go away. After all, rumors about an affair had trickled through her social circle for some time, but she had always dismissed them as petty gossip. Now the evidence was piling up, pictures of Charmaine in lavish settings that Elizabeth knew only Damien could access. She placed a hand on her small baby bump. With the child's gentle fluttering in her womb, it felt like both a promise and a reminder. She and Damien were a family. They had a future. She told herself, "I have to trust him. Stress is the last thing I need right now." But doubt is a seed that once planted grows rapidly, especially in the lonely quiet of a large estate where your husband's presence is rare. One drizzly afternoon, Charmaine discovered the depth of Damien's secret. A single oversight on his part, he had left a series of open messages on his laptop while he stepped away to answer a phone call. Charmaine saw a digital note from Damien's assistant congratulating him on his wife's pregnancy. Charmaine's heart clenched. She knew Elizabeth existed, but she hadn't realized Elizabeth was pregnant. Jealous fury simmered beneath her carefully poised exterior. She paced the penthouse, chewing on her glossed lip. Eyes narrowed. "He's going to have a baby with that woman," she hissed under her breath. "What about me?" But soon a twisted idea formed in her cunning mind. She decided to use this pregnancy to her advantage. If she could insert herself into the baby's life, she might become indispensable. And so she hatched a plan, so audacious it felt almost delirious, host a baby shower. For Elizabeth, yes, but secretly orchestrated by Charmaine herself and used as a platform to humiliate the pregnant wife or force a confrontation in public. She cornered Damien one evening with a proposition. "You never do anything big for Elizabeth," she said sweetly. "Why don't we celebrate her pregnancy? It'll be good, Pierre. Everyone in your social circle will know you're a family man. You're committed to your wife." He stiffened. "Elizabeth is very private. Besides, she's in Connecticut, and you know she's had complications before. She wouldn't want a big show." "Oh, hush," Charmaine insisted. "We'll make it a small, intimate affair. A high-end baby shower with carefully vetted guests. I'll handle everything discreetly. It'll be a great show of unity, especially for the tabloids. You could even do it at one of your properties to keep it private." Damien frowned, torn. "I don't think Elizabeth would appreciate it if a stranger organizes her baby shower." Charmaine placed a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Sweetheart, you need to show your support to your wife. Let me help. I'll ensure it's tasteful. No press, just close friends. I'll do all the heavy lifting. Besides, if you throw a shower for her, it'll erase all those silly rumors about me and you." Her eyes sparkled with the hidden motive, a chance to stake her claim in his life, to show Elizabeth and the world that she was more than just a rumor. Damien was reluctant, but eventually conceded, thinking it might indeed quell whispers of scandal if there appeared to be a friendly relationship between the two women. Charmaine couldn't help but smirk when he agreed. She quickly sent out invitations, making sure to invite only select members of high society and a few of Elizabeth's acquaintances. She didn't invite Elizabeth's family or closest friends. She wanted to keep the event's planning under her strict control. News of the upcoming baby shower spread quietly through upper-crust circles, almost as if it were a secret event for the select few. Elizabeth heard about it from Bella Thompson, who received an invitation by email. Elizabeth's confusion grew. A baby shower hosted by Charmaine Delgado. The name alone made her heart skip a beat. Instead of confronting Damien directly, Elizabeth decided to keep her composure. She confronted him calmly on a phone call. "Why is Charmaine Delgado organizing my baby shower?" Damien cleared his throat, his tone reassuring. "I wanted to do something special for you," Charmaine volunteered. "She's helping me out. I have so many business commitments, and you know she's got connections in event planning circles. She promised it would be small and refined." Elizabeth's gut twisted, but a part of her wanted to believe he was telling the truth, that Charmaine was merely a helpful business associate. She grudgingly agreed to attend, if only to avoid stress and hope for the best. After all, she had always wanted a moment to celebrate her pregnancy with friends. Maybe this was an olive branch. Maybe it would help her and Damien reconnect. But behind the scenes, Charmaine pulled every string to make this baby shower a spectacle. She selected an opulent venue, a palatial rooftop terrace belonging to one of Damien's real estate partners overlooking Central Park. She ordered pastel floral arrangements, towering centerpieces of orchids and roses imported from a prestigious florist in Paris. There would be a harpist, a string quartet, an array of gourmet amuse-bouches, and a cake so lavish it rivaled wedding tears. In the hush of her private thoughts, Charmaine planned her own unveiling. She would arrive looking stunning, the perfect hostess. She'd drop hints about her closeness with Damien to unnerve Elizabeth. And if all went according to plan, Elizabeth would be so overwhelmed she might even retreat, leaving Charmaine to bask in Damien's spotlight. As the date of the shower approached, Elizabeth felt an unshakable anxiety. She was 7 months pregnant, trying to remain calm for the sake of the baby. Bella accompanied her to Manhattan, insisting she shouldn't go alone given her fragile emotional state. They arrived at the luxury hotel where Damien had booked them a suite. When Elizabeth entered the penthouse suite, she found a note from Damien, apologizing that he wouldn't be able to join her immediately. He had an urgent business dinner. She sank into the plush sofa, tears threatening. Her hand instinctively rested on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle kicks. Bella poured her a glass of sparkling water. "Damien's being distant again," Bella said softly. "Do you trust him?" "Lizzie." Elizabeth blinked back tears. "I'm trying to. Everything is so confusing right now. He insists he loves me, wants this baby. Yet I see Charmaine in all his public appearances, and now she's hosting my baby shower." Bella offered a reassuring arm around her shoulder. "Tomorrow, you'll see the truth. Sometimes you need to look your fears in the eye. If something is off, I'll be right there to support you." That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She thought of her father's disapproving glance whenever the subject of Damien arose, recalled how her mother once gently hinted that Damien's lifestyle might not mesh well with a stable marriage. Elizabeth had defended him passionately, saying he was just driven, not unfaithful. Now her worst suspicions were creeping in. Could Charmaine Delgado be more than just a helpful business associate? A brilliant late-morning sun bathed the rooftop terrace in golden light the next day. Waitstaff wearing crisp white uniforms circulated silver trays of champagne flutes, fresh squeezed juices, and hors d'oeuvres. Guests trickled in, each more glamorous than the last. The decor was a pastel dreamscape. Delicate pink, mint, and lavender ribbons dangling from tall arches of greenery. A harpist plucked gentle tunes in the corner. Charmaine Delgado made her entrance in a sleek mauve cocktail dress with diamond accents. Heads turned. She was radiant, playing the role of the gracious hostess to perfection, greeting influential socialites and business figures with warm smiles. She seemed to relish every polite question about her connection to the Blackwells. Her eyes roved over the crowd, waiting for Elizabeth. After a tense elevator ride, Elizabeth arrived on the rooftop, escorted by Bella. The moment Elizabeth stepped onto the terrace, a hush fell, followed by murmurs of admiration. She wore a flowing cream maternity gown, her face glowing despite her anxious heart. She placed a protective hand over her baby bump. Charmaine approached with outstretched arms, her smile a calculated blend of warmth and condescension. "Elizabeth, darling, I'm so glad you made it. I've been dying to meet you in person." Elizabeth plastered a polite smile. "Thank you for hosting this. It's quite lovely. I wanted to honor the mother of Damien's child." Charmaine emphasized the name with a slight smirk. "He's told me so much about you. We must chat more later, once you've greeted all these lovely guests." Elizabeth nodded, her brow furrowing. As she glanced around, she noticed many faces. Some were her distant acquaintances, others complete strangers. Few of her real friends were here. It felt like Charmaine's friends, Charmaine's alliances. Elizabeth suddenly felt alien in what should have been her moment. Across the terrace, a small group of women huddled together, whispering and glancing at Elizabeth. She felt the sting of their judgment. Rumors about Charmaine's relationship with Damien had clearly reached these circles, and many were watching to see how Elizabeth would react. Damien himself was noticeably absent. An hour into the festivities, Elizabeth tried to make the best of it. She politely thanked each guest for coming, endured the cooing over baby gifts, and fielded vague compliments about how lucky she was to have such a supportive friend in Charmaine. Bella hovered protectively nearby, noticing the forced smiles and the subtle slights. "Lizzie, "Do you want to sit down?" Bella asked gently. "You look pale." Elizabeth felt overheated, but she forced a reassuring smile. "I'm fine. Just need a bit of water." Bella guided her to a seat. As a waiter brought over a glass of ice water, Charmaine reappeared, dragging along a tall woman named Harriet McAllister, a flamboyant gossip columnist for one of the city's scandal rags. Harriet was known for her sharp tongue and sensational headlines. She was exactly the kind of presence Elizabeth had wanted to avoid. Charmaine purred Elizabeth. "Darling Harriet here would love a quick chat about your plans once the baby arrives. She's a dear friend and does these wonderful pieces on society families." Elizabeth's stomach churned. She felt cornered. She recognized Harriet's byline stories about extramarital affairs, hidden marriages, and love children that sold out tabloids. With a forced graciousness, Elizabeth offered a handshake. "Pleasure to meet you." Harriet's lipsticked grin was disarming. "My readers would be thrilled to know about your journey. We rarely see you in public. Are you hoping to step into more philanthropic work?" After the baby, Elizabeth recalled her ongoing involvement with children's art education. "I've always been philanthropic, Harriet. My work with underprivileged children is where my heart lies." Harriet's gaze flickered to Charmaine, as if searching for a bigger story. "And how has Ms. Delgado here helped you prepare for motherhood?" Elizabeth swallowed her discomfort. "She's kindly hosting this shower. It's very thoughtful of her." Charmaine smirked, hooking an arm around Harriet's. "Damien trusts me implicitly with these sorts of things. We've collaborated on many projects." Elizabeth's heart hammered. She wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled politely, feeling a swirl of nausea. Harriet's eyes gleamed, sensing tension. "Well, I look forward to writing something wonderful," Harriet said, in a tone that implied she wanted to dig up drama. "Thank you both." As Harriet wandered away, Charmaine leaned in close to Elizabeth, lips curling in a mocking smile. "You must be so exhausted. Sure you can handle all this excitement?" "Dear," Elizabeth met her gaze firmly. "I'm fine. I hope Damien arrives soon. This is after all our baby shower." Charmaine's eyebrows arched, a spark of triumph in her eyes. "Oh, he'll be here. Don't worry. He wouldn't miss his own event." From across the terrace, Bella flashed Elizabeth a worried look. Something was brewing, and they both sensed that Charmaine had not yet played her final card. Mid-afternoon, a wave of murmuring swept through the guests. Damien Blackwell entered, flanked by a couple of his business associates. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, exuding confidence, even as tension pinched the corners of his mouth. Elizabeth mustered a smile as she approached him. He leaned down to kiss her cheek, whispering, "You look beautiful." She forced a smile. "Thank you." Without missing a beat, Charmaine swooped in, greeting Damien with an intimate hug that lingered too long. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. Some guests averted their eyes uncomfortably. Others watched eagerly for signs of drama. Damien cleared his throat. "Charmaine, you've outdone yourself. This is spectacular." She beamed. "Only the best for your wife." Her lips curved at the word, as though it were a faint insult. "Now, dear guests," Charmaine said, raising her voice to gather attention. "May I have everyone's attention for a moment? We have a very special surprise planned for Elizabeth and Damien." Two waiters wheeled out a multi-tiered cake adorned with sugar roses and a shining gold bee for baby Blackwell. Gasps of admiration rose among the guests. Charmaine continued, "This baby represents a new chapter in the Blackwell legacy. We all know Damien is a man of ambition and power, But behind every great man is a great woman. Or so they say. Elizabeth, you're carrying his pride and joy, his future heir. Elizabeth swallowed, bracing for the spotlight. She felt a wave of relief that at least in this moment, Charmaine's speech sounded oddly supportive. But then Charmaine's gaze flicked to Harriet McAllister in the crowd. Sometimes Charmaine said, "The greatest test of love is how we handle adversity." And I think we all need to raise a toast to that. Because it's not just about the baby. It's about forging a future that might change the face of the Blackwell Empire forever. A hush fell as glasses were lifted. Elizabeth felt something ominous in Charmaine's words. Damien's expression was inscrutable, yet a slight twitch in his jaw betrayed tension. "Cheers!" Charmaine declared, her eyes flashing with triumphant challenge. Glasses clinked, but no one seemed entirely at ease. It was as though the moment was waiting for something to drop like the hush before a devastating storm. The cake was sliced. The harpist played softly, and guests milled about in the golden glow of early evening. Bella pulled Elizabeth aside gently, pressing a crisp document into her hand. "Lizzie, this came by courier for you at the hotel front desk. It's from your father." Puzzled, Elizabeth unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned over a statement from her father's attorney referencing property transactions tied to Damien and Charmaine Delgado, purchased under a shell corporation. Elizabeth's heart stuttered. So it was true he was financially supporting Charmaine in more ways than a simple fling. There was mention of a property in Paris, high-end jewelry acquisitions, and hush money payments disguised as consulting fees. Tears pricked Elizabeth's eyes. Her father had, in his own cautious way, tried to protect her. This document spelled out a betrayal more devastating than any rumor. She glanced at Bella, who squeezed her hand in support. Elizabeth took a steadying breath. "I need to confront him. Now." Leaving Bella behind, Elizabeth navigated through the throng of guests. She found Damien alone near the bar. His phone buzzed on the counter beside him. He looked anxious, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. She handed him the document, voice quivering. "Damien, what is this?" He scanned the pages, color draining from his face. "Elizabeth, I can explain." Her voice rose, trembling with anger and heartbreak. "Explain how you're buying properties for this woman while I'm at home pregnant with your child. How many lies have I believed? Were you ever traveling on business or just off with her?" He tried to grab her hand, but she recoiled. "It's complicated. I was trying to protect you, the baby. My deals are huge. They require alliances." Charmaine was Elizabeth's eyes glistened. "You used me. I was carrying your child, hoping we'd be a real family, and you've been building a future with her." A hush spread as guests nearby picked up on the argument. Charmaine across the terrace watched like a hawk, lips curving into a small smile. Damien struggled for composure, but the tension in the air crackled. Elizabeth turned away, tears streaming. She was about to flee when Charmaine made her final move. Charmaine approached, feigning concern. "Elizabeth, darling, is something wrong?" Elizabeth glared at her. "Don't darling me. You know exactly what you've done." Damien looked on helplessly. Charmaine battered her lashes, turning to the onlooking crowd. "My friends, please, let's give Damien and Elizabeth some space." Then, in a lower voice, she added, "We're all on the same side, right? This is Damien's baby, after all." Elizabeth's voice cracked. "You have no business in my marriage." Charmaine smirked. "I hate to be the bearer of difficult news, but you might want to brace yourself." She placed a hand on her own stomach. "Because I'm pregnant too." Gasps rippled through the guests like an electric shock. Elizabeth's face went ghostly pale. The words seemed to echo, bouncing off the marble columns of the terrace. Damien's eyes widened in horror. What Elizabeth breathed, barely able to stand. Bella rushed to her side, supporting her. Charmaine's smirk deepened. "Surprised Damien is going to be the father of my child? That's the real reason I planned this shower. A test run, if you will, for the bigger celebration." A mixture of shock and revulsion spread across the guests. Harriet McAllister had her phone out, already taking notes for a sensational article. Elizabeth's trembling hand rested on her own belly. The heartbreak was overwhelming. She thought of the many nights she prayed for this pregnancy to be safe, while her husband created a new life with Charmaine. The betrayal was too immense to put into words. Damien looked trapped, like a man whose secrets had finally caught up to him. "Charmaine," he hissed. "You said you wouldn't." She flipped her hair triumphantly. "I changed my mind. You can't sweep me under the rug anymore, Damien, especially not when I'm carrying your child. Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Elizabeth's legs weakened, and Bella guided her to a chair. The crescendo of scandalous whispers rose around them. For a moment, Elizabeth's world spun. Quietly, deliberately, Elizabeth stood again. She locked eyes with Charmaine, then glared at Damien. Her anger surged, adrenaline fueling her. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a document, her official marriage license to Damien, along with a copy of their wedding certificate, sealed and signed by the state of Massachusetts. She raised her voice with as much composure as she could muster. "You think you can come into my baby shower, my life, and pretend you have some rightful claim to my husband? Let me make something clear to everyone. Here I am, Mrs. Elizabeth Redwood Blackwell, and that is not changing unless I say so." She held the documents up for the onlookers to see. "This is our marriage license, and we are legally married. This scandal you're trying to create will not erase that fact." Charmaine's composure wavered for a second, but she quickly regained her smugness. "Legally married or not, I'm carrying his child. That's a bond you can't break." Elizabeth's tears were gone, replaced by anger and the fierce protectiveness of a mother. "Get out of my face!" Damien tried to step between them. "Both of you calm down. This is not the place for." Elizabeth turned on him with fury in her eyes. "Not the place, Damien. You let your mistress plan my baby shower. You humiliated me in front of all these people. You might have impregnated her too, and you have the audacity to say this is not the place." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The tension in the air was suffocating. Harriet, phone in hand, was practically salivating at the unfolding drama. The hush gave way to frantic whispers. Some guests discreetly slipped away, wanting no part in the public meltdown. Others stayed transfixed as though watching a train wreck they couldn't turn away from. Elizabeth staggered, pressing a hand to her belly. Bella, alarmed, quickly came forward. "We need to get you out of here, Lizzie." Charmaine sneered. "Oh, the poor dear. Maybe next time she won't be so self-righteous when she's married to a man who can't stay faithful." Elizabeth's voice trembled with outrage. "If I wasn't pregnant, I'd slap you right now." Bella, furious, snapped. "Let's go, Lizzie. This isn't worth risking your health." They made their exit, the stunned crowd parting like the Red Sea to let the pregnant wife pass. Charmaine's lips formed a triumphant smirk, as though she had won something. But in truth, she had just ignited a scandal that would haunt all three of them. Damien hesitated a moment, torn between chasing Elizabeth and dealing with Charmaine. Ultimately, he rushed after his wife, leaving Charmaine in the middle of the shell-shocked guests. Harriet McAllister wasted no time snapping a covert photo of Charmaine's smug face. Later that evening, social media was ablaze with rumors of the fiasco. Several guests posted cryptic updates. Never seen a baby shower end with such fireworks. Harriet McAllister teased a big expose fueling interest in every corner of Manhattan High society. Back in the penthouse hotel suite, Elizabeth was inconsolable. She had locked herself in the bedroom while Bella tried to calm her down, urging her to rest, to think of the baby. When Damien arrived, Bella blocked his entrance. "Lizzie doesn't want to see you right now," Damien spoke in a low, urgent voice. "I need to explain." "Please, Bella." Bella's eyes flashed with protective fury. "Explain how you lied to her for months, how you not only cheated on her but let your mistress host her baby shower." "Just go, Damien. You've done enough." The door cracked open. Elizabeth's voice, weak from crying, emerged. "Let him in, Bella. I need to hear what he has to say." Reluctantly, Bella stepped aside. Damien entered and found Elizabeth sitting on the edge of the bed. Her eyes read a box of tissues at her side. "Lizzie," he began softly. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this to happen." "Charmaine. Well, she was more than a fling, but never meant to replace you." She looked up, anger and heartbreak shining in her eyes. "Is she really pregnant?" He hesitated. "She says she is, but I haven't seen any medical proof. She blindsided me too. I swear I never intended for that to happen." Elizabeth let out a bitter laugh. "So it's a possibility. I was home carrying our child while you were off, impregnating someone else." He sank to his knees beside her. "There's no excuse. The truth is I got caught up. I was lonely traveling, dealing with pressure. We drifted apart, and Charmaine was available. I'm sorry." Tears streaked her face. "Lonely, I was lonely too. I lost 2 babies before this one. Remember, I needed you, Damien." His voice cracked. "I know, Lizzie. I failed you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right if you let me." She stared at him, an ocean of hurt welling in her eyes. "Right now, I need space. I need to protect my baby. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Bella re-entered, guiding Elizabeth into the next room. "She needs rest, Damien. You should go." Damien stood, realizing the gravity of what he might lose. "Lizzie, I love you. I love our child. I promise, whatever it takes." His voice trailed off. Elizabeth turned away, tears dripping from her chin. "Just leave." While Elizabeth tried to recover from the emotional blow, Charmaine reveled in the aftermath. She sat in her own luxury apartment, scanning gossip websites. They'd already begun posting sensational headlines. "Millionaire, real estate, mogul faces baby shower scandal, 2 women. 1 baby or 2. She sipped champagne. Smiling at the tabloid photos, one showed Elizabeth, tear-streaked, holding the marriage license aloft. Another captured Charmaine's triumphant smirk. But her phone rang with an unexpected call. Gerald Anderson, one of Damien's close business associates, an older man who had brokered many of Damien's biggest deals. Charmaine answered playfully, "Gerald, darling." "Calling to congratulate me?" Gerald's tone was ice. "You've made a spectacle of yourself and Damien. This fiasco is dangerous for the company." The board is worried about negative press. Damien's deals in Asia are already wavering. Investors don't like scandal. Charmaine rolled her eyes. Tell them to relax. All publicity is good publicity. People will forget in a week. Gerald's voice hardened. Not this time. Your stunts might cost billions. Damien's name is on the line, and so is yours if you keep pushing this. I'd advise you to disappear quietly or face legal consequences. Charmaine bristled. Legal consequences for carrying his child. Don't be absurd. I have my own resources. Damien won't let anything happen to me or the baby. Gerald's laugh was humorless. You're naive if you think he'll jeopardize his empire for you. My recommendation: lay low, handle this discreetly, and pray that Elizabeth doesn't drag you through court. That would be a bloodbath you can't win. The line went dead. Charmaine's smirk wavered. She realized with a chill that no matter how cunning she was, she might be playing a game against forces far larger and more ruthless. Still, she refused to be intimidated. Damien might be the father of her unborn child if she was indeed pregnant, and she intended to leverage that to her greatest advantage. Days turned into a week, and the scandal didn't die down, as Charmaine had predicted. If anything, it spread further. Media outlets that usually stayed away from private affairs devoured the story. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Damien's reputation took a hit, and so did the share price of some of his companies. In Connecticut, Elizabeth tried to find solace. She spent hours in her art studio painting her emotions, swirls of dark blues and fiery oranges depicting her turmoil. Bella stayed with her, ensuring she ate and rested. Late one afternoon, her father, Jonathan Redwood, arrived. He was a tall, stern man who rarely showed emotion. When Elizabeth saw him step into her living room, she burst into tears. She was Daddy's little girl, and her heartbreak was palpable. He held her gently. I'm here now, Lizzie. We'll fix this. Through sobs, she recounted everything. The baby shower. Charmaine's bombshell, the public humiliation. Jonathan listened quietly, anger flashing in his eyes. It's time to think about your future, not just your marriage, he said in a measured tone. Damien's not the only one who can protect you financially. You have your trust fund, and your mother and I will support you. If you want a divorce, we'll ensure you and the baby are taken care of. Elizabeth's lips trembled. I love him, Dad, but I can't be with someone who betrays me. Not if he won't change. I have to put my baby first. He squeezed her shoulder. Your mother and I stand behind you. We'll consult with top lawyers. Whether you want a settlement or full custody, we'll figure this out. Elizabeth took a shaking breath. I just need time to think. I don't want a drawn-out court battle. It's too much stress for the baby. But I won't let Charmaine ruin my life. Her father nodded. Take all the time you need. We'll keep your options open. In that moment, Elizabeth felt a seed of strength. She might have lost faith in her marriage, but she wasn't helpless. She had her own resources and a powerful family behind her. She vowed not to let her child suffer because of Damien's mistakes. Meanwhile, Damien scrambled to contain the fallout. He held emergency meetings with his PR team and business partners. They devised a strategy to minimize damage, releasing a statement that personal matters are being handled privately and urging the media to respect the family's privacy. But the tabloids thrived on scandal, and every new rumor about Charmaine's alleged pregnancy fueled more headlines. Damien left countless voicemails for Elizabeth. She rarely answered, speaking only when absolutely necessary, mostly about her doctor's appointments. Desperate, he drove to Connecticut unannounced, ignoring his schedule of business calls. He found Elizabeth in the backyard garden, tending to a patch of hydrangeas. She looked serene, though heartbreak lingered in her eyes. Bella, seeing Damien approach, quietly slipped inside. Elizabeth rose, wiping her hands. "Damien." He swallowed hard. "Lizzie, I know you need space, but I had to see you." She shrugged. "I'm guessing your board is demanding that you fix this mess." He sighed. "They are. But that's not why I'm here. This is about us, our baby. I'm sorry I let Charmaine get so close. I was an idiot letting her host that shower. And if she's really pregnant, I'll deal with it." Elizabeth inhaled slowly, the weight of her sorrow evident. "I'm not sure there's an us to fix anymore, Damien. You humiliated me. You lied. You might have fathered another child. How do we come back from that?" He stepped closer, voice cracking. "By remembering what we had, what we still have. We've always been there for each other, especially after our miscarriages. Don't let Charmaine's scheming tear us apart." Elizabeth bit her lip. Memories of their wedding day fluttered in her mind, the quiet vows, the sense of hope. Could she forgive him? Finally she spoke. "I can't just snap my fingers and pretend everything's okay. I need to see you genuinely change. I won't raise this baby in a broken home. But I also won't let you walk in and out as you please. It's all or nothing." He nodded, tears gleaming in his eyes. "I understand. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. I'll cut Charmaine out of my life, if that's what you want." Elizabeth's gaze turned steely. "What if she's pregnant with your child? You can't just walk away from that responsibility." Damien looked pained. "I'll provide for that child, but that doesn't mean I have to be with her. I want my family with you." Elizabeth's throat tightened. "Show me you mean it. Because if this is another lie, Damien, I promise you I will walk away for good." A week later, a private meeting was arranged. Elizabeth insisted on seeing Charmaine's proof of pregnancy before making any decisions. Charmaine agreed to a meeting, likely eager to flaunt her hold over Damien. They chose a neutral location, Gerald Anderson's stately townhouse in the Upper East Side, away from prying paparazzi cameras. Elizabeth brought Bella and her father. Damien arrived with 2 of his lawyers. Charmaine came with a small entourage, including a self-proclaimed celebrity attorney known for high-profile cases. Tension was thick. Jonathan Redwood set the tone. "We're here to determine if Ms. Delgado is truly carrying Damien's child. If so, we'll discuss necessary arrangements and responsibilities. If not, we'll consider legal action for defamation and emotional distress." Charmaine, wearing a fitted designer dress that showed only a slight curvature at her stomach, crossed her legs confidently. "How dare you threaten me? I have every right to be here to claim what's mine." One of Damien's lawyers interjected. "We have a doctor on standby to conduct the appropriate blood tests and ultrasound. You agreed to this, Ms. Delgado." Charmaine hesitated. "I want my own doctor. Someone I trust." Jonathan Redwood shook his head. "We'll have an impartial physician, one neither side can manipulate. If you refuse, we'll assume you're lying." Charmaine's eyes flicked to Damien. "You'd do this to me." "Doubt my word." He sighed. "You've given me every reason to doubt you, Charmaine. I need proof." She glowered, but eventually relented with a shrug of feigned indifference. "Fine. Test me. But when it comes back positive, you'll regret questioning me." The group moved to a private office where a discreet physician waited. Under watchful eyes, Charmaine underwent a brief ultrasound and blood draw. The tension was palpable as they waited. Damien stood beside Elizabeth, glancing anxiously between her and Charmaine. Bella and Jonathan Redwood watched from the corner, arms folded in silent judgment. When the doctor completed the ultrasound, the screen showed a small embryo clearly visible, measuring about 9 weeks. Charmaine wasn't lying about being pregnant. The hush in the room deepened. A tear slipped down Elizabeth's cheek. Damien closed his eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. Charmaine sent them both a triumphant smile. "Told you." The group reconvened in the townhouse parlor. The doctor confirmed Ms. Delgado is indeed pregnant, approximately 9 weeks along. Further blood tests will confirm paternity, though Ms. Delgado states Mr. Blackwell is the father. Elizabeth felt her world tilt again. Damien swallowed, looking at Elizabeth with guilt. Charmaine smirked at them both, an air of victory radiating from her. Confronted with the undeniable reality of Charmaine's pregnancy, Elizabeth felt a crushing weight descend upon her. She excused herself from the tense meeting, stepping out into the townhouse garden. The gentle sound of a fountain trickled over the hush of thick hedges. She tried to steady her breathing, fighting tears. Damien found her there, carefully approaching. "Lizzie." His voice trembled with heartbreak and regret. "I'm so sorry." She turned eyes blazing with pain. "You've saddled me with a lifetime of sharing you with that woman and a child that's not mine. Do you realize how devastating this is?" He reached for her hand, voice thick with remorse. "All I can do is own my mistake. I don't want to lose you. Let me prove to you that I can be the husband and father you deserve." Elizabeth's tears flowed freely. The child in her womb kicked as though sensing her distress. "I don't want my baby to grow up in a broken home, but I refuse to be in a marriage with 3 people. He squeezed her hand gently. "I'll handle everything with Charmaine. We'll set up a trust for her child, ensure financial security. But my home is with you and our baby." She pulled away. "Words aren't enough anymore, Damien. Show me through your actions. If you think I'm going to live under the same roof with you while you juggle some arrangement with Charmaine, you're wrong. I'm staying here in Connecticut until I decide what's best for me and the baby." He nodded, tears glistening. "I understand." With that, they returned inside. Charmaine looked at them smugly. Jonathan Redwood gave her a cold stare. "We'll be in touch regarding legal arrangements. Until then, do not contact my daughter directly. Any communication goes through me or her attorneys." Charmaine flipped her hair. "Damien, you know how to reach me if you need anything, especially with the child's appointments." Elizabeth's heart clenched. Without another word, she left, followed by Bella and her father. Damien lingered behind a silent desperation in his eyes. The lines were drawn. The story exploded in the media once Harriet McAllister got wind of Charmaine's confirmed pregnancy. The tabloids had a field day with headlines like "Millionaire's double-duty wife" and "Mistress both pregnant." Late-night hosts made snide jokes. Online comments ranged from sympathy for Elizabeth to outright mockery of Damien's lack of fidelity. Elizabeth retreated to Connecticut, turning off her phone for days at a time, focusing on her health and painting to channel her emotional turmoil. Bella stayed with her, creating a buffer against the swirling press. Jonathan Redwood consulted with divorce attorneys, property lawyers, and PR strategists to weigh every possible outcome for Elizabeth. Damien did his part to distance himself from Charmaine, if only to placate Elizabeth and salvage his marriage. He cut off personal contact channeling communication through his lawyers. He tried to focus on his business acquisitions, but investors grew skittish. The scandal had tarnished his brand. He faced a crisis in Asia when a major partner threatened to pull out unless he resolved his domestic issues. Charmaine, for her part, attended a few public events, flaunting a small baby bump lapping up the media attention. She granted Harriet McAllister an exclusive interview, painting herself as the wronged woman who had accidentally fallen in love with a powerful man. She teased that she still believed Damien would choose her if Elizabeth walked away. Despite the bravado, she was beginning to fear the Redwood family's legal might. As Elizabeth neared her 8th month of pregnancy, her doctor worried about her elevated stress levels. She decided that for her baby's well-being, she needed clarity even if it was painful. She summoned Damien to Connecticut for a final decision. They sat in the sunroom, where the afternoon light filtered through tall windows. Elizabeth wore a simple linen dress, her large belly a testament to how close she was to giving birth. Damien, looking weary and older than his years, sat across from her. Bella remained nearby, silently supportive. Elizabeth spoke first, her voice calm but resolute. "I've had time to think. My father is willing to help me file for divorce the moment I decide it's over. But I don't want to make a choice I'll regret just because I'm angry." Damien listened intently, clasping his hands. She continued, "I love you. I want our child to have both parents. But I won't be humiliated or lied to. If I stay, I need to know Charmaine is out of our life in every possible way, except for the child you'll need to support. That's unavoidable, but I will not have her at family events in our homes or near me." Damien's eyes brimmed with tears. "I swear, Lizzie, I'll do whatever it takes. I want to raise our child together, and I'll protect you from her. I made a mistake, a catastrophic one, but I refuse to lose you because of it." She inhaled shakily. "Charmaine won't go quietly. You've seen how she craves attention. She's going to hold this child over your head, and she might stir up more drama. If it becomes too toxic, I'm gone." He nodded. "I understand. I'll sign any post-nuptial agreement you want. We can set up a legal framework for Charmaine's baby. Child support visitation. Everything will go through attorneys. No personal involvement." Elizabeth's voice trembled. "I'm giving you one last chance, Damien. Don't betray me again, because I won't survive another heartbreak." He moved to kneel in front of her, gently placing his hand on her belly. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a chance to be a better man for our baby." She placed her hand over his tears, spilling. "Don't waste it." A month later, Elizabeth's contractions began late at night. Bella drove her to the hospital, and Damien rushed from the city the moment he got the call, in the sterile glare of the maternity ward. Elizabeth labored through hours of pain, her screams echoing in the corridor. Finally, a healthy baby girl was delivered, wailing with robust life. Damien broke down in tears when he first held his daughter, whispering thanks and apologies to Elizabeth. Exhausted, she smiled weakly, letting him kiss her forehead. There was a sense of fragile unity in that moment. Over the next few days, Elizabeth stayed in the hospital, regaining strength. Damien remained by her side, doting on the baby. Bella and Jonathan Redwood visited, offering cautious support. A swirl of media inquiry buzzed outside, but the hospital maintained strict privacy protocols. The Redwood name carried weight, ensuring Elizabeth could recover in peace. As Elizabeth held her newborn daughter, warmth filled her chest. Love, hope, and determination to protect this precious child. She watched Damien cradle the tiny girl who had his dark hair and her soft features. For a moment it felt like they were a real family, untainted by scandal. But reality loomed. Charmaine was nearing the midpoint of her pregnancy, and she would soon deliver a child who shared Damien's DNA. That future weighed heavily on Elizabeth's heart, even as she tried to savor the bliss of new motherhood. Elizabeth decided to move back to the Connecticut estate, permanently away from the city's gossip. Damien agreed, hoping to rebuild their relationship in the tranquility of the countryside. He spent more days commuting between the city and the estate, determined to show Elizabeth he was committed. Legally, Charmaine's child was recognized. Through carefully negotiated documents, she received a comfortable allowance, medical expenses, and a guarantee of ongoing child support once the baby was born. She tried to push for more face-to-face involvement, but Elizabeth refused. Damien kept his distance, only communicating through lawyers and the occasional phone call regarding medical updates. Charmaine's bitterness grew as she watched from the sidelines. She had expected a grand romance or a highly visible co-parenting arrangement that kept her tethered to Damien's life. Instead, she was relegated to the outskirts, a footnote in his empire. Though wealthy by association, she was still alone, pregnant with a man who'd chosen his wife over her. It wasn't the victory she'd imagined. For Elizabeth, life became a delicate balance, caring for her newborn daughter, grappling with the trauma of betrayal, and trying to trust Damien again. Each day that he returned from the city, without any sign of infidelity, was a small victory. She wondered if she could ever fully forgive him, but she loved him enough to try. Months passed, and the scandal gradually faded from public view, replaced by fresher celebrity gossip. Elizabeth and Damien shared quieter days at the Connecticut estate, cherishing the baby girl who had brought them a renewed sense of purpose. Charmaine eventually gave birth to a healthy boy, then drifted into a more private life when headlines ceased to favor her story. Still, the memory of that explosive baby shower lingered like a cautionary tale. In their elegant living room late at night, Elizabeth sometimes caught Damien gazing at her with a mixture of regret and gratitude. Their marriage was far from perfect, and trust was a fragile plant that needed constant nurturing. But they had chosen to move forward together. And that's the story of the millionaire who let his mistress host the baby shower, only for his pregnant wife to show up with their marriage license. Love, betrayal, and a chance at redemption if they can hold on. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster ride of secret affairs, surprise pregnancies, and unexpected confrontations. If you were as captivated by this tale of love, betrayal, and redemption as we were, please hit the like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with your friends who crave juicy drama and unforgettable twists. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we'll be bringing you even more riveting stories that shine a light on the hidden scandals lurking beneath the glittering surface of high society. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to keep you on the edge of your seat with our next jaw-dropping tale.